Geoguessr World Cup. Wait, did he just say Geoguessr World Cup? Yes, it's 2024 and guessing where you are on Google Maps is an actual esport. And it just had its second official World Cup take place in Stockholm earlier this month. But wait, how do they compete? Simple, you have two players playing against each other, they both make a guess, whoever is closer deals some damage, whoever runs out of their health first loses. Okay, that sounds fine, how could that possibly have any issues? I'm glad you asked. Geoguessr duels are simply not fair. How exactly? Here's a clip.
One of these roads right there that he's pointing at too.
Locked
and
in
we
with
just
the lineup.
East, I think Zigzag just gets 4,000 points here.
This could hurt! This could hurt bad! It's gonna be nearly full damage here, 4,900.
With an almost perfect guess, Zigzag deals 4,964 damage to his opponent. Nothing wrong here, right? Let's continue.
Orlando, what are we talking about, man? I don't think we have the same kind of confidence.
I think
Nigeria
I
here.
think it might be Nigeria.
Oh, it is! Oh no! He kind of gives him back.
Here we can see that Orlando is closer this time, and if we do some math, Orlando should deal 4,034 points, right?
A lot of damage. With the
game!
multiplier and he wins. No!
What? He won? Yeah, that's right. Orlando won because round 2 carries a 1.5 times multiplier. Meaning that Orlando, on top of his 4,000 points, gets another 2,000 points for an objectively worse guess. In Geoguessr community this is called multi-merchanting. Multi-merchanting is when you play worse in the earlier rounds with no or low multipliers, but then play better in the later rounds with higher multipliers and therefore profit, since these multipliers increase after every round. Here's another example.
If RC's on it, he takes it. Who is it, Paula?
It's RC! Round 2! 1.5x multi is not enough!
If we ignore the multiplier, Radu does 3,338 damage. With the multiplier added, that's 5,007 points of damage.
A few moments later.
I don't know.
Is this
Not
it?
like this.
Trevor! Is that game?
But just 2 rounds later we get the same scenario, but the roles are now reversed. Now Fao is the one dealing damage, and if we ignore the multiplier once again, Fao does 2,538 damage.
Yes.
However, this time the multiplier is 2.5 times instead of 1.5 times, and so with that added, Fao does 6,345 damage and just barely knocks Radu out of the tournament. In total, Radu won 3 rounds and did 3,756 damage, while Fao won only 1 round and dealt 2,538 damage, yet Fao won the game. There are lots of examples of this happening where people get knocked out simply because of the round order. But you may ask, why do multipliers even exist then? You see, Geoguessr games can get long sometimes, especially when you have 2 very skilled players who make very few mistakes. That's why there are multipliers, to make guesses deal more damage so that the games don't take forever, but also to make them more exciting, since higher multipliers can create bigger swings in the game. However, that is not the only feature that Geoguessr added to make the games shorter. There is also a round limit. Every Geoguessr game has a 10 round limit, meaning that after 10 rounds someone has to win. How is the winner decided? Whoever has more health remaining wins. You're kidding, right? Nope. So if I have 10 more points than you, I win? Yep. Okay, but that's never gonna happen, right? Well, actually it happened. Sheena versus Chicago Geographer no move game round 10. Sheena lost by a 10-point difference. Imagine if this was the grand finals, how boring would that be? To have a basically equal game be decided like this is just silly. But okay, it happened like once, it won't happen again, right? Well, actually, it happened again. In the quarterfinals game, Topotic versus Orlando, in the second moving game, this happened.
Try and see if he can take him out. It's going to be game regardless, but is it going to be enough points to separate them? Orlando is ahead, but is he going to get it? Wait.
That is enough!
Orlando's 300 points combined with the insane 5.5 times multiplier ended up being 1,645 points, which was enough to take out Topotic by a 74-point difference. It is just absurd that 300 points, which are never taken seriously in the earlier rounds, end up dealing massive blows in the later rounds due to insanely high multipliers. This means that very often it just comes down to a single round, and being more consistent simply doesn't matter. To help you understand how silly these multipliers are, imagine this scenario. You and I are playing a game, for example rock paper scissors, with a 10 round limit, and whoever has more points after those 10 rounds wins. Every round has a point value, and that value doubles after every round. So let's say you win the first round and you get a point. The value of the second round now goes to 2. You win again, the value of the next round goes to 4, and so on. Let's say that you win 9 out of 10 rounds. You absolute goat. But I win the 10th round. But okay, it doesn't matter, you still won 9 out of 10 rounds. Of course you win, right? Well, actually, if we add up all these points, we see that you have 511 points, while I have 512. Absolutely insane. I know that this is not the best comparison since Geoguessr multipliers don't increase exponentially, but it still helps you paint the picture of the absurdity of this system. Or let's say we're playing football, or soccer for my freedom enjoyers, and in the first half a goal is worth 1, as it should be, but in the second half it's worth 3 goals. I don't think anyone would be down for that. Except for maybe Geoguessr developers. Okay, but how do we fix this? I will propose some possible solutions later in the video, but for now, let's see some other issues this competition has to offer. Every Geoguessr match begins with a moving game. In this mode, players have a minute to look for any kind of information to help them make a better guess. Moving is also the most important game mode, since in a best of 5 match, you're always guaranteed 2 moving games. But here's the thing, moving as a mode has somewhat of a bad reputation.
No one is playing moving in the top 10 at all. It's like 2/3 NM, 1/3 NMPZ, if not a little bit more. Third page, also no moving games. It's like, bro, I don't understand why they're making the most important moving one, the one that no one at the top actually plays. How long do we have to go till we get an actual moving player here? Bustel, number 66. Like, if you total up everything, if you total up to this line, to the Bustel line, everything, all the moving games, it's like 20. And the other modes would be like nearing 1,000 or something.
On top of not being very popular amongst pros, moving is often memed in the community as whoever gets to information first wins. And this is kind of true. Moving games are often decided by one player simply finding a sign with lots of information that the other player simply doesn't have.
Maybe
Looks like I'm wrong, since we don't have any stoppy poles, so... Oh yeah, we have C roads, which and Melbourne on the sign. I think that's definitely favoring Kirania here.
A few moments later.
Because he has
5 kids.
small town names, and I think he has found Gypsy points, so yeah, this will be huge damage. This might be game, I think.
Oh, could definitely
B, yes it will be. Kirania takes Jake.
And while you may argue that some players are better at finding and using information than others, which is true, you also have to admit that very often it just comes down to luck. On the other hand, no move, where you can look around and can't move, and NMPZ, which basically means you get a single image and that's it, are much more fair since they provide both players with the same information. It's easy to see why moving is simply not a balanced mode. Also, the big part of being a good moving player is getting those juicy 5Ks. But in this format, 5King is simply not worth it. It is much better to instantly guess as soon as you have any kind of information and give your opponent as little time as possible to find the same thing you found. I'm not even joking, this is what moving duels generally look like. On top of that, when you add high multipliers and a round limit, this mode tends to be the most random one. So I said earlier in the video that I would give you some solutions to these issues, so here we go. When it comes to multipliers, I propose a system that would work like this. I say we keep the multipliers. They're exciting, they make the game more interesting for both the player and the viewer. However, we need to change the way they work. Firstly, and most importantly, the multipliers cannot depend on the round order. With the round-based multipliers, there will always be an issue of multi-mergenting. Instead of that, I propose that each player has their own multiplier. Player can increase the value of his multiplier by winning a round. Meaning the more rounds you win, the higher your multiplier is. This way, getting closer on every round matters and being consistent is rewarded. This would also encourage players to practice smaller countries that are often overlooked since every round matters now. Then we have the multiplier increases. Maybe instead of fixed increases, we could have them be based on the quality of the player's guess. Like this, for example, multipliers based on the amount of raw damage that you deal. For example, if you deal 1200 damage in round 1, by this system you would gain a 1.6 multiplier for round 2. Then if you deal 600 damage in round 2, you would get a 1.4 multiplier on top of that 1.6 multiplier, meaning that you would have a 2 times multiplier for round 3. Also, the multiplier increases shouldn't be the same for all 3 modes. Moving should have the highest multiplier increase and NMPZ the lowest. with no move being in the middle. The multiplier increase should also be capped, meaning that after a certain point, the multipliers should stop increasing. Something like a 3 times multiplier should be the sweet spot, where we can still see some big comebacks, but it would also be less random and harder to achieve those big swings. By the way, these are just arbitrary numbers and should probably need some testing first. Then we have the issue of the round limit. As I said earlier, Geoguessr developers don't want games to take forever, since they have limited time at their disposal. But let me ask you this, why is there 6000 HP if they want to make the games shorter? Just make it 5000. First of all, 6000 just looks ugly. Well, 5000 is a nice round number. 5000 is the maximum amount of points you can get anyway. And finally, we would have slightly shorter games by having less health. Perfect. Additionally, since we have 600 seconds for an ideal game, why don't we make rounds shorter and have more rounds overall? If we make rounds 40 seconds long, which is still plenty of time, we can get 5 more rounds. Also, more rounds means that there is a higher chance of someone making a mistake, which should again make games shorter. Okay, but what if we still don't have a winner after those 15 rounds? We have a tie. Now, I propose 2 options. We either call it a draw and have players split a point, or we play a tie break and we do it like this. If the health difference between the players is greater than 1000, we keep the round limit rule and whoever has more health remaining wins. If, however, the health difference between the players is less than 1000, then we play a small best of 3 tie break with shortened rounds. Whoever wins 2 rounds takes the game. I don't think that this solution is ideal, but I find it somewhat better than the current one. Then we have the moving duels. Now, if you were to ask me, I say we simply get rid of them, but yeah, I guess we can't do that, so let's try to fix them instead. Firstly, 5Ks need to be more valuable, meaning that if you get a perfect score and your opponent doesn't, you have some kind of major advantage. Then we should also reduce the time pressure to give both players a chance to find the same information. So maybe instead of the timer going to 15 seconds after someone guesses, it goes to 20. Also, we can nerf moving indirectly by having more other game modes. What I mean by that is that instead of always having moving as a first game mode, we let players have a preferred mode, and the one that isn't chosen gets to be a decider. This way, we would nerf moving and we would also get more NMPZ and no move games, especially NMPZ. In this current format, NMPZ simply doesn't get enough screen time, while it offers some of the most exciting games out there. And for the moving, at the end of the day, moving will always be somewhat random, since players will often not have the same information. By the way, I'm not saying that no move and NMPZ can't be random, but that they simply offer the same information to both players. These are just some examples, and I understand that they might also have some flaws, but no system is perfect, and I think that the main thing here should be Geoguessr developers admitting that there is an issue with the current system and hopefully taking action towards making a better one. For some final words, I want to say that despite all of these issues, I still think that this World Cup was a major success, and I personally enjoyed watching it. This was a big step for the whole Geoguessr community that only seems to grow bigger by the day, and I'm very curious to see what the future holds for this upcoming esport. But that is it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.